Welcome to the Art of Marketing Operations, a Taylor podcast. I'm Glenn Bottomley, and today my guest is Chelsea Johns, Director of Marketing at Swoon, a beverage company which offers tasty, deliciously healthy, zero-sugar drink alternatives so that you can live a healthy lifestyle. Thanks for joining me today, Chelsea.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Chelsea, now you have worked in marketing and brand management now for more than 12 years. Where did your passion for marketing come from?
Yeah, so for me, marketing always seemed like sort of the intersection at business of all things that are fun relating to business. You got to plan events, you got to work with athletes and celebrities, you got to have ads, work on ads in magazines or maybe billboards, product placement in movies. It just seemed like all of the fun things that you could do in business all surrounded marketing. So I really love that. But I think what surprised me as I grew further into my marketing career was that there was an aspect of sort of anthropology and psychology, in a sense, around marketing. You kind of got to understand consumer behaviors, consumer attitudes around your products and how they interacted with their products in their lives. And I thought that was really interesting. And then there's so many ways to analyze the data now, and that was something that early in my marketing career I didn't do at all, but it's actually something that's really interesting to me now is looking at the data and seeing what drives consumer purchase behaviors and brand affinity and things like that. So what drives the result? What's the activity that's doing that? I agree 100%. Every single day in marketing is different. And I love that. It's so dynamic. It's for an inquisitive person. It's a great place to be. So that's great. So, well, let's dive right into it. So, what is Swoon? Yeah, so Swoon is a zero sugar beverage. We started with a sugar-free simple syrup, and then we recently, about a year and a half ago, launched some ready to drink. So it's sort of your classics made better. So classic lemonade, pink lemonade, things that you enjoyed growing up, but that were just jam-packed with sugar, are now offered naturally zero sugar, sweetened with monk fruit. One of the founders was is a type 1 diabetic. And so she, along with the other co-founder, founded this brand because they didn't want to give up having great drinks for themselves or for their kids and, having to sacrifice, great drinks for the sake of having a healthier lifestyle. So that is what Swoon is. We've recently launched a new product that sort of delves into the functional beverage space in terms of the energy drink space. It's a matcha lemonade. So it's a collaborative product with Chamberlain Coffee and ourselves, and it's a ready to drink matcha lemonade, and it's doing really, really well for us. So,
how exciting! Now I would imagine that you have had to work pretty hard at changing customers' perceptions of the core product. It's obviously more than just saying you're different, right? So how do you actually go about actually changing perceptions?
Yeah. So I think these days, people are bombarded with advertising, whether it's, on television or on digital channels or things like that. So just telling them, to your point, that something is different or better is really hard to get through. So that's why for me, influencer marketing is really so core to brands and what they do these days. Influencers already have a core set of, not consumers, I guess, followers that are following them because they really believe in what their likes and dislikes are, and it just feels a lot more genuine. So I think influencers these days are sort of like word of mouth on steroids. Nothing feels more authentic than your neighbor or your friend or your family member telling you how much they love a certain product. That being said, as a new brand, there's only so many people who have tried your product and can then, tell your product to their friends. So, influencers is sort of that to the next level. They're authentically telling people what they love about your product. And I think it's also just really important as a brand to work with influencers who genuinely do like your product, because those are usually the influencers that work better, are ones that have to wait and try your product and then will tell you if they want to work with you or not. Because I think even when it comes to influencers' audiences, consumers can tell inauthenticity So we want it to really come across as authentic as possible, genuine like of the product, and a real genuine experience. I would say, obviously big fan of influencer, but I think also, PR is a great way to get, awareness to consumers that feels more authentic. Hearing from a trusted news outlet that they love your product, that news outlet, the author loves your product, feels, a bit more authentic than a digital ad or a print ad. And then, I think just you really getting your product in front of people and letting them try it, because there's nothing that's going to convert someone better to your product than them actually trying it and loving it. So
that's wonderful. I love how you phrase that. And I definitely want to be digging in on the influencer marketing. Before we get there, though, let's talk a little bit about the product. You've done a great job explaining that. And let's talk about the broader sort of, customer experience. And so, as you've described, as a customer's perception of a product starts to shift, then there's the actual experience with the product. So are there sort of key components that you've found over the years, key components of a customer experience that, you really have to nail? You got to really get those down just right?
Yeah, I would say for CPG brands in particular, consumer packaged goods brands in particular, most of the sort of initial discovery of the product is still happening in stores and on shelf. So, while I think most brands these days are trying to be digital first and get in front of consumers before they hit the stores, a lot of times your first point of contact with the consumer is in the store. So, first and foremost, you need to have beautiful packaging, and you need to be telling the consumer what the benefits are really clearly on the packaging. That might be their first and only experience and touch point with the brand. So I think obviously nailing the packaging is super important. Secondarily, like once they do buy the product, hopefully they try it and love it. And so there's nothing better than a consumer having a great experience with the product. That being said, I would say the third thing that is often overlooked is the consumer connections, the customer service side of things. So, it's inevitable that some consumers will have a bad experience with a product for one reason or another. There's a damaged can, or maybe it tastes a little off to them, or for whatever reason they have a less than ideal experience. And I think that's sort of the crossroads for a brand, is you can either lose a customer forever, or you can convert them into a real brand loyalist. And I think having super strong customer service can really turn people from, walking away from the brand to really loving the brand. So while I think all of the marketing touch points in terms of growing awareness are super important, I think, packaging, product, and customer service are really core to growing any brand.
That's a great way to phrase that. Just as a side note, I had this past winter in Minnesota. Of course, it gets very, very cold here, and I had ordered some water that just came to my home. But to your point, the exact scenario you mentioned, the package arrived, and 3 of the cans had burst open. And it was no fault of shipping or anything. It was just weather that had busted those open. So I contacted them, and you're exactly right. It was like within seconds they immediately credited the account. They did this, they did that. So to your point, that customer experience, let alone the packaging, the product itself, the taste, flavor, etc. But really responsive customer service, that did make a difference, for me. So I appreciate you highlighting those 3.
Yeah, definitely.
So for B2C marketing teams today, what do you think right now is the most important marketing channel?
Yeah, I think it just really depends on your consumer. And so I think that's generally when I start with a new brand, especially startups, there's a lot less consumer insights than when you're working at really big brands. So the first thing I try to do is do some customer surveys and really understand where is the consumer sort of living, learning, and buying. So, from that standpoint, there's so much you can learn from a consumer survey. For example, if you know that your target consumer wakes up and say reads a news digest like The Skim, and then they hop on Instagram and they scroll through Instagram for 15 minutes, and then they roll over to the gym. You've already in the first few hours of the day found 3 ways that you can market to them. You can, advertise in the news digest. You can advertise to them on Instagram via a paid ad or an influencer, and you can sample product at their local gym. So I think the consumer insight is super important. For me, in the last couple of brands that I've worked on, we've been really Gen Z focused, and so platforms like TikTok have been really important because consumers spend a lot of time there. Consumers really get sucked in and can spend hours upon hours on a platform like TikTok. That being said, if you're a product that I guess markets to maybe an older crowd like my mom or something like that, she does not have the TikTok app and doesn't follow influencers even on Instagram. So I probably have to reach her either, maybe on Facebook. She does spend some time on Facebook, or just in-store promotions and things like that. So you really have to shift your focus and your efforts based on where your consumer is showing up on a daily basis.
That's great advice. And TikTok, you mentioned TikTok. The fascinating thing I think about TikTok is, sort of the predecessor. I remember Vine, with a lot of the fun Vine videos that you would see. But it always seemed very self-contained. But TikTok seems to be so ubiquitous. You see TikTok on YouTube, you see TikTok on it's sort of transcended media. It's really quite fascinating to just see the brands that are embracing it, and how everybody is just embracing sort of the experience that TikTok can bring. I'm assuming that has been your experience as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's become a real major competitor to Meta, I guess we should say, call now instead of Instagram and Facebook, because people just spend so much time there. And yeah, to your point, you see people filming content on TikTok and then like re-uploading it to a platform like Instagram.
Yes.
So yeah, it is everywhere and growing.
Exactly. So let's shift now back to what you were chatting about. So I wanted to cover a bit on the product there, but let's now go to the marketing side, because you really have a specialty in this area, and that is influencer marketing. So why do you think that influencer marketing has become just so popular as a part of the marketing mix today?
Yeah, I think it's because, I think it's twofold. Like, influencers have become popular because they create great content. So, sometimes we call them influencers, sometimes we call them content creators. But really, they, obviously inherently create content that people like to watch, which is why they've become so popular of their own accord. I think from a brand standpoint, it saves, I guess, a brand time and money in some senses, because if we're going to try to create an ad, we're going to have to, still pay an actor or an agency or things like that to create, a beautiful photograph, a really fun and engaging videos. So if we're going to not only get that content, but also get those followers, those genuine followers at the same time, it makes a lot of sense to, go with the influencer route. I think people have been so bombarded with advertising in general. It's sort of people's, I guess, habit to just skim through the advertisement anyway. I don't know how many times I've watched a YouTube video and I am just counting the seconds to skip the ad because it is not something that I am like, that is relevant to me. It's not something I want to hear about. I'm like, wait, 3, 2, 1, skip ad.
Skip.
So I think from that sense, it's like you're following an influencer because you're interested in what they have to say. So you're going to them to be engaged with their content and watch the video from start to finish, or like their photo and comment on it because you're genuinely like the person and you genuinely like what they have to say. So it's just so much more authentic than it was before. That being said, there are a lot of influencers who do a lot of paid partnerships and have hashtag paid and hashtag partner, and I think even those tend to have less engagement and less conversion capabilities, which is why it's really great to work with influencers on an ongoing basis, to have them try the product in advance to make sure they genuinely like it. Because I think then it's like, maybe you do your first post and it's in a paid capacity, but then they actually become a genuine brand fan, and they'll start posting about it organically, and their followers will realize, oh, this person does actually genuinely like this product, and it's they're not just doing it because they're getting paid. Everybody knows that the influencers are getting paid these days for this, but to the same extent, they understand that a lot of these influencers do genuinely like the product, so it does still have influence on people. And I think also when it comes to influencers versus celebrities, influencers have so many followers, they essentially are celebrities. Some of them we call celebrity influencers at this point, and vice versa. Celebrities that are in, models or actors or things like that, they in a sense also are influencers. But I think the difference with celebrities we found is that people aren't really coming to that, people are coming to them because they're interested in what they're doing in their life that's really cool, the new music video, the new movie, things like that. But with influencers, they just want to know what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. What products are they using? What are they eating? What are they drinking to be fit, or things like that? So it's actually, you could probably find a lot more success working with an influencer that has a few 100,000 followers than working with a celebrity that has a several million followers. That being said, the Kardashians aside, I think that they convert on everything they touch. But but yeah, that's kind of where we found success.
No, that's good. So imagine you were consulting with a company, and that company was trying to determine should I utilize influencer marketing as a go-to-market approach. Have you found, are there sort of signals or characteristics for either a product or for the company where you would say, yes, I feel that utilizing influencer marketing would be very good for you as part of your marketing mix, versus another brand or company or product where you would say, I don't know if influencer marketing would be as effective for you? Is there any characteristics that would point you one way or the other?
Yeah, I think, well, first and foremost is the sort of age demographic of your target consumer. Younger demographics tend to skew more heavily towards influencer marketing and converting on influencer marketing and being influenced by influencer marketing, versus, older demographics. Even myself being an older millennial, I don't follow a lot of influencers outside of the fact that now I do because of my role. Yeah. But I'm not, I'm usually following influencers that I want to work with, but I'm not, it's just not what I grew up doing, and I'm still not often doing it. So I think if you're getting to my age demographic and older in general, probably influencer marketing shouldn't be your first, foray into a certain channel. That being said, there are a lot of people of all age demographics that are following influencers on social media channels. But I think, it goes back to who's your core consumer, and are they converting off? So I'll do surveys sometimes where I'm like, what is the last product you bought online, and what compelled you to buy it? Was it an ad? Was it a Facebook ad? Was it a TikTok ad? Was it an influencer? So I think going back to what your consumer's lifestyle is. Also, obviously you have to have a strong online presence. You have to be a product that, I think the more widespread you are, if you're, for example, if you're like a local product that is only available in a certain state, working with a macro influencer who's, reaching people across the nation wouldn't make sense just from a cost perspective, because you're paying for that reach, but most of that reach is not going to be relevant for your product. So I think you have to sort of have a certain level of national distribution, or be available to purchase online nationally. And then also, of course, find influencers that skew towards your geographies. So, in this day and age, there could, there's influencers everywhere. Then there's influencers that reach out to want to work, with us, but they'll be based in Canada, and we don't sell in Canada, for example, or things like that. So you have to, of course, take into account where you're going to be reaching consumers when you work with influencers. So I would say those are the two, biggest factors. And then also, I think it's really important to have a way to measure the effectiveness of influencers. The metric that I go by is EMV, or earned media value. So there are certain software platforms such as Tribe Dynamics where you can track your influencers, how engaged their posts were, and how many times they've posted about you. So it kind of helps you see like, okay, this influencer posted about us, and in theory, they might have 500,000 followers versus another influencer who has 100,000 followers, but the EMV of the 100,000 follower influencer might be greater than the bigger influencer because they have stronger engagement. So it kind of factors in both impressions and engagement into the earned media value that the software provides you. So that's really helpful if you're going to be investing significant dollars into a platform, into an effort like influencer marketing, you need to be able to measure it. So,
and you talk about dollars a bit. So, how much does an influencer campaign cost compared to other marketing channels? What's been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite expensive in general compared to other initiatives when it comes to CPMs or the amount of views you actually get. But it's hard to measure the sort of intangibles when it comes to influencer marketing, just in terms of a more authentic brand experience, better getting across your brand benefits and things like that. And I think that's one of those things where you almost like, if you know that your consumer is following influencers and is going to be impacted by influencers, you sort of have to just dive in and start doing it, because you can't work with one influencer, two influencers to think you're going to see an impact. It's like an ongoing, constant thing, month in and month out. And then you really start to see the flywheel of that buzz where you're like, oh, it's like, more people are reaching out to us in our DMs asking to work with us. Maybe you talk to a buyer at a big retail store and they've heard of you because they've seen it on Instagram, or their kid has mentioned it because their kids have seen it on Instagram or TikTok or things like that. So it's sort of these intangible, or like, not directly conversion, related metrics that you start to see once you really lean into influencer, that I think is really interesting to follow.
Oh, and also the long-term view, as you just mentioned, that it's not something that you just turn on and then, ta-da, it just starts to work. It is something that, you're nurturing it over and over and over again, and it's quarter after quarter, year after year, in that how it builds on it. And I like your the description of the flywheel about pulling that in, and then the returns start to come from there. So I think that's excellent. So aside from Swoon, which companies in the market today do you think are successful using influencer marketing as part of their marketing strategy?
Yeah, so I mean, the last company I worked with, which was Poppy, is excellent at influencer marketing. I would say, the influencer marketing manager we had at Poppy came from Vital Proteins, and she was fantastic. Vital Proteins, I think, is also another one that does influencer marketing really well. I mean, yeah, I think just having influencer team members who are really motivated and really nurture those influencer relationships is so key, because when it comes to influencers, again, any brand can go out and pay most influencer, not every influencer. Again, some influencers are very picky with who they work with. That being said, any company can find some influencers to work with, but I think the more important part is nurturing those relationships and keeping them ongoing. So, doing ongoing gifting is really important, influencer boxes and things like that. And I think there's just a ton of brands in the CPG space. Obviously, I'm more attuned to CPG space, but also in the beauty space, I've seen really cool influencer kits from Kosas. There's really, Chamberlain Coffee, I think is great at, they have a celebrity influencer co-founder who we're working with, not to keep bringing it back to our brand, but
That's okay.
I mean, there's just so many that are doing it well these days. It's actually hard to break through the noise. And I think that's where it's really important for a brand to have an influencer team that's really day-to-day managing those influencer relationships. And that's what's going to set you apart.
That would be good. And what kind of, if you were if you were trying to build an influencer team, as you described, on your team, what kind of background would you be looking for, to try to hire onto the team who would be successful as an influencer, as a member of an influencer team?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally working with someone who already has experience with another CPG company in influencer marketing is ideal, because I think when it comes to influencers, we start segmenting out influencers of like, this person skews towards like, beauty content, this influencer skews towards nutrition content, and this influencer skews towards, whatever it might be. So obviously if you're, wanting most of your influencers to be in sort of a health and wellness space, finding an influencer manager who has already worked with brands in that space would be number one. But also secondarily, I think finding someone who's worked with an influencer, because a lot of influencers these days have someone helping them with their posts, with their contracts, with their schedules and things like that. So so finding someone who's like worked directly with an influencer is also sort of has a leg up, because they have seen that the flip side of things, and that therefore it makes them better poised to negotiate negotiate contracts and work influencer relationships on behalf of a brand.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I actually hadn't thought of that, but certainly the experience in working with an influencer, they're going to know what motivates them. They're going to know, sort of the structure of arrangements and expectations of what it would be like to be an influencer. So excellent advice there. That's really fascinating on the influencer side. And if we broaden it back out now a little bit, in addition to influencer, and think about all of the other, parts that you have in a marketing mix. So what career lessons sort of have you gained on how you create an overall digital or omni-channel campaign to be successful? Let's take it from a brand new product launch. What are some of those key lessons that you've learned to ensure success?
Yeah, I think being in marketing for so long, there's always they talk about the marketing funnel. So, top of funnel awareness, and then sort of engagement and conversion. And you want to be based on where your company is at if you're a startup, obviously you need to put more funds towards awareness driving tactics. If you're a more established brand, you want to focus more on the lower funnel conversion. You might be more focused on running promotions, the consumer experience, consumer loyalty side of things. So I think, there's always the sort of standard marketing channels, activations that you think about. From an awareness standpoint, there's paid digital, there's PR, there's influencer, things like that. From sort of the mid funnel, once they know about your product and maybe they're on your email list. So there's, keeping them engaged through email, through SMS, through sampling, demos and sampling, things like that. And then of course you want to convert them. So then again, that goes to promotions, whether it's digital promotions or in-store promotions and things like that. And then finally, like the loyalty piece is just making sure they have an excellent experience every time, and you give them incentives to spread the word with their friends and family. So I think knowing that like the certain buckets that I want to focus on, I just adjust that accordingly based on the size of the company and the consumer insights that I hopefully have or I'm working on getting on each particular brand to adjust accordingly.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. I appreciate all that background. I think that's great. So before we wrap up today's episode, so what is the main takeaway that you want to leave us with in understanding the challenges facing marketing operations executives today?
I would say, it's a ultra competitive environment, and there are a lot of ways to, get data. And I think just being really fast paced and always working with a sense of urgency and always going back to the consumer, constantly going back to the consumer and their experience. Where are they living, learning, and buying? And always looking at your data and making sure that you have the right KPIs set up for every stage of the funnel. So making sure that you're looking at awareness driving tactics, and maybe your KPI for that is impressions or media value, and constantly optimizing for the objective that you're running towards. For lower funnel, looking at the data when it comes to how well are your promotions performing, and pivoting accordingly. So I think in this day and age, it's so easy to get data from every single source. There's no reason not to be constantly looking at the data and constantly adjusting your strategy as needed. So I think those would be my key takeaways and keys to success when it comes to marketing and marketing operations.
That's wonderful. Well, that wraps up this episode of The Art of Marketing Operations. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chelsea.
Thank you for having me. And also feel free to provide my contact info to any of your listeners. I'd be happy to connect with anyone.
I love that. Will do. Well, until next time, stay safe, take care, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to The Art of Marketing Operations, brought to you by Taylor. Don't forget to hit subscribe in your favorite podcast player. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and share. Until next time.